Pinak Ranjan Chakrabarti, who's the former Secretary of the Ministry of External Affairs, is with us. Also with us is Mr. James Dorsey, who's the International Affairs expert. Let me actually take this across to Mr. Chakrabarti for the moment. Mr. Chakrabarti, we were just getting a lowdown of what really is expected. I believe Professor Swaran Singh, who's from the School of International Studies, JNU, is also with us. So thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. But Mr. Chakrabarti, what do you think is expected after the big Modi and Biden bilateral happens? What do you think is on the cards?
Well, I think there will be further consolidation. This is not an overnight thing. This all began early part of this century when the Clinton administration was in the White House. It changed things, and slowly through 4 presidents, things have moved on. But today we have reached a stage of greater sort of interaction. There's a flurry of visits, and of course culminating in this visit, a state visit, etc., which is of course part of protocol, just hyping it up a bit, like we do in India when we have a state visit. You know, the Rashtrapati Bhavan is used for all these ceremonies, etc. So what we are seeing today is another cycle in the changing geopolitics of our era, and I think this is what is bringing the two countries together, the two largest democracies, no doubt, who have also been in the past called estranged democracies, because our global interests and visions did not coincide in the past. But that's the past, and I think today we are living in a different era. As I said, the geopolitical cycle, the geoeconomic cycle has changed, and things are different today. We have a change in the balance of power in the world, which is shifting towards Asia. But the US, of course, is a global power, and it has always been in Asia in various ways. It has allies in Asia. It is seeking a greater sort of a role for India in Asia. We have the Quad. We have so many things happening that it sometimes it's difficult to keep track. Technology, innovation, then defense technology. That is probably the high point of this visit. The agreement on the sort of jet engines is a big thing.
Yes.
We are of course buying other things also from. So slowly what we are seeing gradually is that the USA is becoming a major defense partner of India, something which traditionally the Soviet Union and Russia sort of filled that role. So there is a change. So there is a change that is happening, and clearly the national interests are dictating this change. There is obviously the post-COVID era, as we call it now, has its own sort of compulsions, and of course the Ukraine war has its own compulsions.
Yes,
we have differences, and we will continue to have differences.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that these differences should override. I think this is a very mature thing. Earlier, when I was dealing with the US in MEA, it used to be a very one-sided thing that, you sign on the dotted line and that's it. We are not willing to listen to you. That kind of approach does not work, of course, and it did not work then, particularly on certain crucial issues like the nuclear issue. But we finished that in 2008. Mercifully, we finished that. That's no longer an issue now. So we are in for a greater degree of consolidation in the years ahead.
All right. So is that correct to say, Mr. James Dorsey, then, that in an attempt to build these supply chains, meeting with American CEOs like the Tesla chief, Mr. Elon Musk, is part of India putting itself out there so that it's recognized as one of the world leaders, it wanting a seat at the high table? How important would that be?
It's very important. I think what we're seeing, and I agree with your former speaker, that there is change. But I think one needs to put that change into perspective. India is in the process of becoming, call it a superpower, at some point on par with the United States and China. India has its own interests. I think where you're seeing commonality at the moment is in terms of facing up to China and the synergies that you have between the United States and India. And there are lots of synergies, there's no question about it.
Yes.
But if we go back to the evolution with China, if you wish, I think there's something to be learned from that. And that evolution was that the United States envisioned China as becoming another major democracy, and that ultimately it would, as would China, benefit from the opening up of China. That hasn't quite worked out that way. Now, I'm not suggesting that India would go down the road of China in any form or fashion, but what I am suggesting is that part of the rivalry that you see between the United States and China is that as global powers, they have diverging interests. And I think that is a process that over time you could also see with the United States and India.
So, Mr. Dorsey, where do you see India's position vis-a-vis China, considering Mr. Antony Blinken was just meeting with Xi Jinping? After he'd returned, you'd seen a very, very strong statement that has come out in the form of US President Joe Biden calling Xi Jinping a dictator. If this is what the state of affairs is between US and China, this is further spiraling that entire relationship down.
Well, I think, first of all, one has to put all of this into a context. Both China and the United States have an interest in ensuring that whatever differences and tensions there are, that those do not spin out of control. In other words, it's about managing, not resolving disputes or conflicts. I'm not sure that the Biden comment about Xi Jinping was a comment that was supposed to be public. And it was made more by Biden, the presidential candidate, than Biden, the president. Now, no question about it, the Chinese are angry. They're going to exploit it for what it's worth. But they, too, understand that China is going to be a major issue in the U.S. presidential campaign. And not everything, or not much about what is going to be said in that campaign is necessarily going to be friendly or positive.